Welcome back, everybody, to Daredevil Born Again series recap and review, where we will be recapping and reviewing every single episode from the series. This week, starting with episode 1 and 2, since they both just dropped on Disney Plus. Now, we've been waiting 7 years for this show, but I do want to go ahead and specify that with this being a recap, with it being in the word, this will have heavy spoilers. And if you want to keep going on this journey with me and watch the show every week and then tune in to see these thoughts, theories, and interpretations, please hit that like and subscribe button. And without further ado, let's go in and get it. So we start the episode out. It's pretty much nice and peaceful. Karen, Foggy, and Matt have gotten off of work. They're going to a bar to drink, and you got a couple new characters getting introduced. And you have some trickery involved because Bullseye ends up shooting Foggy. So before this even happens, because a lot of us were already predicting that Foggy was going to either be very heavily not in the show or, killed or something going on, because he's not really in any of the trailers. And it's almost so much so to the point where you're kind of putting two and two together, and Disney kind of fucked up the other day by releasing that clip, which pretty much had Matt fighting Bullseye, and he listens in and he hears that, Foggy's not doing so good, because even though they don't say his name, it's Karen talking about, hold on, who else could she be talking about? And so I didn't really like that they released that scene, because I just kind of confirmed before the premiere, but what are you going to do, right? So before this even happens, you got some flirting going on with Karen and Matt. And, she's like, maybe we should get out of here. And it's like, it's kind of getting hot, guys. And so, yeah, Foggy goes out there outside to talk with a client. He's outside pretty much in the open. They all go out there, and Daredevil hears gunshots. Actually, they all hear gunshots on the phone with his client, who's supposed to be staying at Foggy's apartment. So he ends up leaving, suiting up. You get this cool little montage of like the music playing. He's like jumping across rooftops. This is probably my only complaint with the show. CGI was a little spotty on that, because they now got him doing Daredevil things like swinging and stuff, because they got the budget. But with that budget comes a few problems, but nothing really too much to complain about. And so, anyways, he's swinging across rooftops and stuff, and then that's when it was actually a ruse. Bullseye lied and told this man, hey, pretend like you're dead and whatever. And I guess he makes some little deal like, hey, I won't kill you or whatever if you do this. And so he ends up jumping in, shooting the hell out of Foggy right in the chest. Karen's over there trying to put pressure on it, and then he goes right over Karen and he says, hello, Karen. But you know who heard the first gunshot? That's right, Daredevil. Daredevil swings right in, and they start fighting. Now, this is the fight that we had already seen briefly in some of the earlier footage that they've been showing us. As we all expect, during this fight, Foggy does die. And, Matt is devastated after the fight that happens with Bullseye. So much so to the point where Bullseye's laughing in his face, and he just throws his ass off the building, like off the roof. And at this point, I was kind of in the thought process of, I hate that Foggy's dead, but he was never one of my favorite characters. But like, man, they're just gonna kill off Bullseye like that in the first episode, also like 2 deaths like that. But whatever implant he got in that finale, which I don't even know if they can talk about because the Netflix stuff, apparently he can survive that, because he just kind of gets right back up. But it is revealed later on that he is in police custody. He is on trial, so that's good to know that at least Marvel didn't kill off another villain. So anyways, we end up flashing forward a year later with Foggy's death casting a shadow over Matt. He's no longer Daredevil, as we've seen from the trailers, and he actually has a new law firm alongside a new character, Kirsten McDuffie. And his happiness is kind of drained. It's really sad. But I will say this, Matt's got some new digs. He's got some new digs. This new law office is nice. They've got fucking furniture. I don't even know where they're at in New York, but I'm telling you right now, but that rent's high. And so, yeah, he goes to Bullseye's trial over Foggy's death. And after the trial, he talks to Karen, who's implied to be living in San Francisco. And this is kind of the part in the show where I'm kind of very on the fence about it because, you know, this group was kind of the bread and butter of the show. You know, whether or not you loved Karen fighting with him or Foggy saying something stupid about how much he doesn't like him being Daredevil, this is still the show. Now, like I said, Foggy being dead, for me, as much as I did like that character, at least we had Karen. But with her being gone out of the show, I'm speculating that we'll probably see her maybe once or twice, you know, towards the finale, towards the final episode, something like that. But the way they wrote her character, I don't see her coming back in the next couple episodes anytime soon, anything like that. And she's also at the type of character with the way they've written her, because she's not in episode 2 at all or even mentioned, to the point where I wouldn't doubt if she's going to show up at all this season. That's kind of unfortunate. And so we end up going into the next scene, which is pretty much just Wilson Fisk and Vanessa. So Vanessa is, you know, sitting there. She's basically taken over his empire, and he's like, no, baby. He's like, after the events of Echo and being shot in the face, he's like, I actually want to be with you. And so their relationship's on the rocks. And I was like, so is this like the theme of the show? Everybody's relationship is just kind of having a friction because she, like I said, she's taken over the criminal empire. He's now the mayor at this point, which we haven't gotten to yet, but you know, as you saw from the trailers, he becomes mayor. And so I guess we're going to skip on to that. So he ends up winning the election and becomes mayor, and you know, Daredevil meets up with this new woman, and on their date, which I kind of already figured, I was like, okay, what are we going to do with this? So McDuffie ends up setting him up with this new character, and it's kind of like a love interest. They kind of got like some chemistry going on, and you know, we'll get to her later because she's really more important in episode 2. But anyways, after him being won over, Matt and Fisk have a conversation at a diner. And it's actually more exciting than the trailers want you to think. So because of their good chemistry, they end up mentioning kind of the events of Echo, and basically Matt's kind of like telling him straight up that, hey, if you revert back to your old ways, I will bring back out Daredevil and I will end you, okay? Kind of like a threat. And so then we get a new MCU hero entering the fray right after this. We end up having the White Tiger show up after the events of the newly elected mayor, because Fisk is commenting on how the city does not need vigilantes, and he actually makes nods directly to Daredevil, Punisher, and Spider-Man. And the episode ends up focusing on White Tiger because immediately, you know, the late actor Kamar Reyes playing Hector Ayala is jumping into harm's way at the end of this episode to save a man from being beaten up. And he's not wearing his White Tiger suit. He doesn't have the amulet that gives him powers or anything like that. And it turns out these guys that are beating up this guy end up being undercover cops. He learns this after one of them accidentally gets killed. He trips and ends up getting hit by a train. And so now the cop is just straight up saying that he murdered him. And on top of that, they didn't even announce that they were cops. So it's just really a lot of stuff going on. This episode kind of just ends with that little cliffhanger of, you know, him saying that he's a cop, and really sets you up for what episode 2 is. Now, moving on to episode 2, this is kind of where we see that Hector is being beaten up by the cops that's keeping him. They're trying to get him to sign a false confession. And then that's when Daredevil pretty much makes the jump to then represent him. You know, the NYPD is having a lot of crooked members, and they don't take too kindly to cop killers. And Matt overhears this and ends up going kind of against his new partner, Kirsten, and ends up being his legal counsel free of charge. But he pretty much kind of knows that he's lying about something, and we already know it's about him being the White Tiger. And so while he's working on his defense case, you have Fisk, who's kind of, you know, going through some bumps, stuff like that. And so even like at one routine traffic jam, he just gets out of his car and he tells these guys to fill this hole, and they do it. He goes through all the red tape, cuts through that, and he's starting to become a more favorable mayor. And this also helps because they're trying to improve his public image. And they start with trying to give him an interview with a young freelance reporter named Bibi Urich. Now, that surname sounds familiar because that's the niece of Ben Urich, the reporter who helped expose Wilson Fisk to the world in Daredevil Season 1. Everybody knows about Urich. And so, we all know that he was brutally murdered by Fisk in Season 1. But the thing about that is that, we don't know if she knows. She acts kind of suspicious. And so she might know. I'm assuming she kind of assumes. We really don't know, though. And so Fisk ends up moving to squash the insubordination of the current NYPD police commissioner. And so he ends up basically going to this funeral of the guy who ends up getting killed by Hector. And when he does that, he tries to appeal to the police commissioner and get nature, but when all else fails, he ends up resorting back to his old ways by blackmailing him, because turns out the commissioner has a child that his wife doesn't even know about that lives just right outside the city. And so we know Echo kind of had like a redemption arc kind of set up for Kingpin, but it turns out that it seems that we're not really going that route. So then back to the trial, Hector ends up kind of getting into a more complicated case because we learned that he is, in fact, the White Tiger. Now, we knew this as comic readers, or even just really just kind of common sense is where it was going. But if you didn't know that, that is where they revealed it to the audience. So that makes his defense a lot harder because this stirs a crisis of faith within Murdoch as he tries to figure out what's the best course of action, because his new girlfriend might help. But she has some new clients for her next therapy session, and turns out they're Kingpin and Vanessa. That's right. Turns out after all this, they're now having problems with their marriage. And so, after that deal in Echo, it put a strain on his relationship with Vanessa, and Wilson wants to be a changed man, or at least he wants everybody to believe that, but we already know he's not because of the blackmail situation. And so he opts to go to counseling. But I want to flash backwards a little bit, a scene that I actually skipped over. So, into episode 1, they show somebody actually painting a mural, and we kind of believe that that is going to be Muse. I mean, it's definitely Muse for sure. But there is a young man who visits Heather, and when he visits her, he's like, I need help, stuff like that. She's a therapist, and she's like, yeah, I'll sign you up for whatever. And it seems like that's probably going to be Muse. And so it's just kind of funny to see that she is going to have 2 criminals that she's going to be talking to, potentially. And so, like I said, leads into this kind of back and forth thing where she's like, I still want to be in the criminal empire, and he doesn't want to be. And we really don't get anything learned from this. But while he tries to work out that, Matt is able to track down a key witness in Hector in his case. And unfortunately for him, all the corrupt cops are actually wanting to go kill him. But when Matt gets there, that's when we get this beautiful scene, realizing that these cops have the Punisher tattoo with the American flag on it, which is something that we actually deal with a lot in the real world. And I cannot believe that Disney signed off on doing this storyline. And so he ends up having to bring the devil out and ends up having a brutal freaking fight scene where he just completely this guy's bone just pops through the skin. It's some of the most insane shit. I don't even know how these guys aren't dead. So I'm assuming they're not, but I don't know how they're not, or at least the second guy, because I'm pretty sure his neck hit the floor and snapped. And the episode literally ends with Matt screaming. So just early thoughts on these episodes. I would give this show right now anywhere from an 8.5 to a 9, but I think I'm going to lean to a 9 because I just love this show's back. I love everything it's doing. I love the action scenes, everything like that. But the problems we have with the show so far is the Kind of spotty CGI, which I mean I would say is kind of expected, but really not because Disney has a lot of money, so like there should never be spotty CGI, but there is. Um, and I feel like that's going to be kind of a trend because now they have him doing Daredevil stuff like running, jumping, leaping, swinging from stuff and all this other crap like that, like he did in She-Hulk, which is great. But if it's not going to look good, I'd rather you just go back to the grounded Daredevil. And then also, like I said, I'm not loving that, kind of sidelining Karen even though she's not dead. I do hope that they bring her back in some capacity this season, which I expect they will. And if they don't, at least she'll be back hopefully for next season for sure. But if they don't, I would have rather them just kill both. Like if I'm being honest, if she's not gonna do anything and she doesn't contribute, and I'm wrong about all this, I would have rather them just honestly killed both. Because not only would that have been even harder if he just popped both his friends, but if you're just not gonna show him, what's the point, right? Unless they do have plans for her, which I hope that they do. I'm excited kind of what they're doing with Muse. Like I said, we really only got 2 scenes with him, and the second scene we're just kind of assuming that that's Muse for right now. Don't really know, but probably is. And then, like I said, going forward, the new characters are okay. The cop that's with him, I believe his name's Cherry or something like that. He is kind of, I mean, he's fine. I like him. I mean, he's not an asshole, but once again, he's not a Karen or a Foggy. The McDuffie that's working with him, I actually do really like her character a lot. And just overall, this is just really, really a good show. I just think that they need to stick the landing. A lot of these Disney Marvel shows don't stick the landing, but this is easily the best Disney Marvel show. And that's just coming off 2 episodes. Every character has something to do. Like I said, even the ones where I'm like, okay, I don't know about. Fisk is great in this show. Vanessa's great in this show. And I'm loving what they're doing with White Tiger. As a big fan of the White Tiger from the Ultimate Spider-Man show, if you know about that, I'm hoping that we end up actually seeing that other version as well. But definitely like, subscribe, and check out more videos on the channel because I will be covering this show every single week. And so hopefully next week when I cover this, hopefully we'll find out some more about the trial for sure. I don't know if they plan on doing an episode on that, just kind of having it done because these are 50-minute episodes. But I know the release schedule is also going to be kind of weird. So if you don't know, this week was episode 1 and 2. Next week's episode 3. Then the week after is 5 and 6. And then the week after that's going to be 7, then 8, and then 9. And so it's pretty much just this week and then the third week that's going to get double episodes. And that's because they want it to end the week before Andor does. Which I thought was kind of weird because for me, I would just put 8 and 9 together. But they're putting 5 and 6 together, so hopefully that'll pan out for sure. But it seems like this show, at least going forward, was kind of structured in a way of it being like a week-to-week show. If that makes sense. Like, kind of like episode 1, it didn't really have like a big cliffhanger. You're like, damn, I gotta watch episode 2. And then episode 2 is kind of self-contained, even though it's carrying on these separate stories. And so I think that really works out well for it. And that's why I'm giving these 2 episodes a 9 out of 10. And I really have faith in the rest of the series. I'm very excited and hope that you guys are as well. And I'll catch you guys on the next one.